Maria stood barely 5 feet tall in her flight boots, her small frame dwarfed by the massive fighter aircraft hangar around her. The other pilots towered over her as they walked past, their conversations filled with technical jargon and war stories she longed to be part of. At 22 years old, she had already faced more rejection than most people encounter in a lifetime. The year was 1943, and the world was at war. While men were desperately needed on the front lines, the military had reluctantly opened its doors to women pilots for non-combat roles. Maria had been one of the first to volunteer, driven by a passion for flying that had consumed her since childhood. She remembered the day she first saw an airplane soar overhead in her small hometown, promising herself that someday she would touch the clouds. Her journey to this moment had been filled with obstacles. Flight instructors had dismissed her because of her size, claiming she couldn't handle the controls of a real aircraft. "Flying is a man's job," they would say, shaking their heads as they watched her struggle to reach the rudder pedals in the training planes. Her own family had begged her to find a safer, more traditional path, perhaps nursing or teaching. But Maria possessed something that couldn't be measured in inches or pounds, an unshakable determination and natural flying instincts that amazed even her harshest critics. During training, she had consistently outperformed her male counterparts in navigation, tactical awareness, and aircraft handling. Her small stature, which everyone saw as a weakness, actually gave her advantages in the cramped cockpits and allowed her to withstand G-forces better than larger pilots. The military had initially assigned her to ferry duty, transporting aircraft from factories to bases, a job considered safe enough for women. She had spent months moving planes across the country, learning every type of aircraft in the fleet. Each flight taught her something new about aerodynamics, engine performance, and combat capabilities. While others saw these flights as routine transport missions, Maria treated each one as advanced combat training. Her reputation as an exceptional pilot had quietly grown among the mechanics and ground crews who worked with her daily. They noticed how she could land any aircraft in impossible conditions, how she understood engine sounds that other pilots missed, and how she never returned from a mission without completing it perfectly. Word began to spread through unofficial channels about the tiny woman who could fly anything with wings. The breakthrough came when a shortage of combat pilots reached critical levels. Enemy forces had been increasingly aggressive, and experienced pilots were becoming casualties faster than replacements could be trained. Desperate commanders began to consider previously unthinkable options, including allowing their most skilled ferry pilots to take on combat roles. Maria had been waiting for this opportunity her entire life. When the call came for volunteers to join a special combat squadron, she was the first to step forward. The commanding officers looked at her with skepticism, but her flight record spoke louder than their doubts. She had logged more flight hours than pilots with twice her experience, and had never had a single accident or failed mission. The decision to accept her into combat training was controversial and risky. Military leadership knew they were breaking new ground, potentially changing the future of warfare. Maria understood the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She wasn't just fighting for her country. She was proving that courage and skill couldn't be measured by physical appearance. As she prepared for her first combat mission, Maria felt a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. She had dreamed of this moment through countless hours of training and preparation. Tomorrow she would finally have the chance to prove that heroes come in all sizes, and that sometimes the smallest person can cast the largest shadow. The pre-dawn hours at the airbase were filled with the mechanical symphony of aircraft engines warming up and ground crews making final preparations. Maria arrived at the flight line earlier than required, as was her habit, to personally inspect every inch of her assigned fighter plane. The aircraft was a sleek, powerful machine that had seen previous combat, evidenced by the patched bullet holes and worn paint on its fuselage. Her squadron leader, Captain Reynolds, approached with visible concern etched on his weathered face. He had initially opposed her inclusion in the combat unit, not out of prejudice but from genuine worry about sending someone so physically small into the deadly arena of aerial combat. Over the past weeks of intensive training, however, he had watched Maria demonstrate flying skills that bordered on supernatural. During training exercises, she had consistently outmaneuvered veteran pilots, using her aircraft's capabilities in ways that surprised even the instructors. Her small size allowed her to fit comfortably in the cockpit for extended periods, and her lighter weight meant her plane could carry more fuel and ammunition. She had also developed an uncanny ability to spot enemy aircraft before anyone else, her keen eyesight and pattern recognition skills proving invaluable during practice missions. The briefing room was thick with cigarette smoke and tension as the squadron gathered for their mission details. Intelligence reports indicated a large formation of enemy bombers approaching a critical supply convoy. The bombers would be heavily defended by fighter escorts, making this one of the most dangerous missions the squadron had undertaken. Maria listened intently as the tactical plans were explained, memorizing every detail about timing, positioning, and emergency procedures. Other pilots in the room occasionally glanced at her with mixtures of curiosity and concern. Some had heard stories about her exceptional flying abilities, while others remained skeptical about her readiness for actual combat. The weight of their expectations and doubts pressed down on her, but Maria had learned to channel that pressure into focused determination. As they prepared to depart, Maria performed her personal pre-flight ritual, a series of checks that went beyond the standard procedures. She tested every control surface, examined every instrument, and ran through emergency scenarios in her mind. Her methodical approach had saved her life during ferry missions when mechanical problems arose, and she knew that attention to detail would be even more critical in combat. The moment of takeoff arrived with a thunderous roar as the squadron's engines reached full power. Maria felt the familiar rush of acceleration as her fighter lifted off the runway and climbed into the morning sky. The sensation of flight never lost its magic for her, but today it carried additional weight. This wasn't practice or transport. This was the real test of everything she had worked toward. Flying in formation with her squadron mates, Maria reviewed the mission parameters one final time. They would intercept the enemy formation at approximately 20,000 feet, using the sun's position to mask their approach. Speed and surprise would be their primary advantages, as they were outnumbered by the enemy escorts protecting the bombers. Radio chatter remained minimal as they approached the target area, with only essential communications passing between aircraft. Maria's heart rate remained steady despite the approaching danger, her training and natural instincts taking over. She had visualized this moment countless times, running through various scenarios and potential outcomes. The first glimpse of enemy aircraft appeared as small dots on the horizon, their formation tight and disciplined. Maria counted at least 30 aircraft, bombers protected by agile fighters that would defend their charges with lethal efficiency. The odds were challenging, but she felt ready to prove that courage and skill mattered more than size or gender. As the distance between the two forces closed rapidly, Maria made final adjustments to her weapon systems and prepared for the aerial battle that would define her career and potentially change military history forever. The enemy formation grew larger as the two forces approached each other at combined speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour. Maria's squadron maintained radio silence, communicating only through predetermined hand signals visible through their cockpit windows. The tension was electric, each pilot knowing that the next few minutes would determine the success or failure of their mission. Captain Reynolds gave the attack signal, and the squadron broke formation to engage the enemy fighters. Maria banked hard to the right, selecting her first target from the swirling mass of aircraft ahead. Her small size proved immediately advantageous as she maneuvered her fighter through spaces that larger pilots couldn't navigate, using the aircraft's agility in ways that surprised even herself. The first enemy fighter dove toward her, its guns blazing with tracer rounds that lit up the morning sky like deadly fireworks. Maria rolled her aircraft inverted and pulled into a steep climb, a maneuver that would have caused many pilots to black out from the intense gravitational forces. Her compact frame and excellent physical conditioning allowed her to maintain consciousness and control while executing the escape. As the enemy fighter overshot her position, Maria reversed course and found herself perfectly positioned behind her attacker. Her first burst of gunfire was precise and devastating, striking the enemy aircraft's engine and sending it spiraling toward the earth below. The victory gave her confidence, but there was no time to celebrate as two more enemy fighters converged on her position. The aerial battlefield had become a three-dimensional maze of aircraft, contrails, and gunfire. Maria used every lesson from her extensive training as she engaged multiple opponents simultaneously. Her ability to think several moves ahead, combined with her exceptional spatial awareness, allowed her to anticipate enemy actions and position herself advantageously. Her second victory came when an enemy fighter made the mistake of trying to outturn her in a sustained dogfight. Maria's lighter weight and superior understanding of her aircraft's capabilities enabled her to maintain a tighter turning radius, gradually closing the distance until she achieved a killing shot. The enemy plane erupted in flames and fell away, leaving a trail of black smoke against the blue sky. By this point, other members of her squadron had noticed Maria's remarkable performance. Despite being vastly outnumbered, she was not only surviving but actively hunting enemy aircraft with the skill of a veteran ace. Her tactical decisions were flawless, and her marksmanship was proving exceptionally accurate under the extreme stress of aerial combat. The third and fourth enemy aircraft fell to her, guns in rapid succession as she exploited their formation weaknesses and superior flying abilities. Each victory was earned through split-second decisions and precise control inputs that demonstrated years of dedicated training. Maria's calm demeanor under fire allowed her to remain focused while chaos erupted around her. Enemy pilots began to recognize the threat she represented, and multiple fighters started coordinating their attacks specifically against her. This attention from enemy forces actually helped her squadron mates, who found themselves facing reduced pressure as enemy resources were diverted to deal with the unexpectedly dangerous small pilot. Maria found herself engaged in a running battle with 6 enemy fighters, using vertical maneuvers and energy management techniques that pushed both her aircraft and her physical limits. Her understanding of aerodynamics allowed her to maintain speed and altitude advantages, even when outnumbered, turning potential death traps into opportunities for counterattack. The fifth enemy aircraft made a critical error by following her into a high-speed dive, not realizing that Maria's smaller mass allowed her to pull out of the dive more quickly. As the enemy fighter struggled with the intense G-forces, Maria reversed direction and eliminated another opponent with a perfectly timed deflection shot. As the battle continued to rage around her, Maria realized she was experiencing something extraordinary. Every aspect of her training, natural ability, and determination was combining to create a perfect storm of aerial combat effectiveness. She was not just surviving against overwhelming odds, she was dominating the engagement and single-handedly changing the outcome of the entire mission. The aerial battle had been raging for nearly 15 minutes when Maria found herself separated from the main engagement, pursuing 3 enemy fighters that had broken away from the larger formation. Her fuel gauge showed she still had plenty of flying time remaining, and her ammunition counter indicated enough rounds for several more encounters. The enemy pilots ahead of her were flying desperately, having witnessed her devastating effectiveness against their comrades. What happened next would become the stuff of military legend. The 3 enemy fighters, realizing they couldn't outrun her superior aircraft handling, turned to face her in a coordinated attack formation. Most pilots would have considered the odds impossible, 3 against 1 with experienced enemy aviators who had nothing left to lose. Maria saw it as an opportunity to end the engagement decisively. She executed a maneuver that her instructors had deemed theoretical at best, a vertical, spiral climb that used her aircraft's power-to-weight ratio to gain both altitude and positional advantage simultaneously. The enemy fighters, trying to follow her climb, found themselves in an impossible situation as their heavier aircraft couldn't match her rate of ascent. From her elevated position, Maria dove on the first enemy fighter with the speed and precision of a hunting falcon. Her guns spoke with deadly accuracy, and the enemy aircraft disintegrated under the concentrated fire. Before the other 2 pilots could react to their wingman's destruction, Maria had already repositioned herself for the next attack. The 7th enemy fighter fell victim to a head-on attack that showcased Maria's exceptional marksmanship and nerves of steel. Flying directly at each other at combined speeds exceeding 600 miles per hour, both pilots opened fire simultaneously. Maria's shots found their mark while the enemy's fire passed harmlessly around her aircraft, a testament to her precise flying and superior tactical positioning. The 8th victory came when the final fighter in the group tried to escape by diving toward the cloud layer below. Maria followed in hot pursuit, using her aircraft's superior speed and her own exceptional piloting skills to close the distance rapidly. The enemy pilot's escape attempt ended when Maria's guns found their target, just as both aircraft broke through the cloud ceiling. As she climbed back toward the main battle, Maria's radio crackled to life with reports from her squadron mates. The enemy bomber formation had been successfully disrupted, with several bombers destroyed and others forced to abandon their attack run. Her actions had drawn away a significant portion of the enemy fighter escort, allowing her teammates to achieve their primary mission objective. But the battle was far from over. As Maria rejoined the main engagement, she discovered that several of her squadron mates were in serious trouble. 2 friendly aircraft were being pursued by a large group of enemy fighters, their pilots calling for immediate assistance over the radio. Without hesitation, Maria dove into the melee to help her comrades. Her 9th victim was an enemy fighter that had been lining up for a killing shot on one of her wounded squadron mates. Maria's intervention came at exactly the right moment, her precise gunfire eliminating the threat just seconds before the enemy pilot could complete his attack. The saved pilot's grateful radio transmission was interrupted by the urgent need to continue the fight. The 10th and 11th enemy aircraft fell in rapid succession, as Maria used advanced aerial combat techniques that combined speed, altitude, and tactical surprise. Her ability to process multiple threats simultaneously and respond with split-second timing was operating at peak efficiency. Each enemy pilot she engaged seemed to underestimate both her skill and her determination. By this point in the battle, Maria had become the focal point of enemy attention. Multiple radio transmissions in the enemy language suggested they were coordinating a concentrated effort to eliminate the remarkably effective small pilot who was single-handedly decimating their formation. This attention from enemy forces created opportunities for her squadron mates while putting Maria in increasingly dangerous situations. The 12th and final victory of her legendary flight came when she engaged the enemy formation leader, an experienced pilot whose aircraft bore the markings of multiple previous victories. The engagement was a masterpiece of aerial combat, with both pilots using every technique in their arsenal. Maria's superior aircraft handling and tactical intelligence ultimately prevailed, ending the enemy leader's career and effectively breaking the morale of the remaining enemy fighters. With 12 enemy aircraft destroyed in a single mission, Maria had achieved something unprecedented in military aviation history. The remaining enemy fighters, demoralized by the destruction of their formation leader and the loss of so many comrades, began to withdraw from the engagement. Her squadron mates watched in amazement as the tide of battle turned completely in their favor, largely due to one pilot's extraordinary performance. Captain Reynolds's voice crackled over the radio, barely containing his disbelief as he witnessed the final moments of the engagement. The grizzled veteran pilot who had initially doubted Maria's readiness for combat found himself struggling to comprehend what he had just observed. In 30 years of military aviation, he had never seen such a dominant performance by a single pilot against such overwhelming odds. The surviving enemy aircraft retreated toward their own territory, abandoning their bombing mission completely. The supply convoy they had been targeting would reach its destination safely, carrying critical supplies to Allied forces who desperately needed them. Maria's actions had not only achieved tactical victory, but had potentially saved thousands of lives by preventing the enemy bombing attack. As the adrenaline of combat began to fade, Maria took stock of her aircraft's condition. Despite engaging dozens of enemy fighters, her plane had suffered only minor damage, a testament to both her exceptional flying skills and her ability to position herself advantageously throughout the engagement. Her fuel reserves were lower than ideal, but sufficient for the return flight to base. The squadron reformed for the journey home, with Maria taking her position in the formation as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Her calm demeanor and professional attitude impressed her squadron mates even more than her combat performance. She treated her remarkable achievement as simply doing her job, without boasting or seeking recognition for her unprecedented success. Radio communications during the return flight were filled with congratulations and expressions of amazement from other pilots. Several squadron mates requested confirmation of the number of enemy aircraft she had destroyed, finding it difficult to believe that any single pilot could achieve 12 victories in one engagement. Maria's modest responses only added to the legend that was already beginning to form around her performance. Ground control had been monitoring the engagement through radio transmissions and radar tracking, providing them with real-time awareness of the battle's progression. When Maria's squadron reported the mission results, including her individual achievement, the control tower initially requested confirmation, assuming there had been a communication error. The numbers seemed impossible by any historical standard. As the airfield came into view, Maria felt a mixture of satisfaction and exhaustion. The intense concentration required for aerial combat had taken its toll, and she looked forward to the detailed debriefing that would follow. She knew that her performance would be analyzed extensively, both to understand how she had achieved such remarkable results and to incorporate her techniques into training programs for other pilots. The landing approach was routine, a sharp contrast to the life-or-death decisions she had been making just hours earlier. As her aircraft touched down on the runway, Maria began the mental transition from combat pilot back to the person who had started the day as an unproven newcomer to aerial warfare. The transformation would be permanent. She had established herself as one of the most effective combat pilots in military history. Ground crews rushed to meet the returning aircraft, eager to hear first-hand accounts of the engagement. The mechanics who had worked with Maria during her ferry pilot days were particularly excited to learn about her combat debut. Many had predicted she would excel in aerial warfare, but none had imagined she would achieve such unprecedented success so quickly. As Maria climbed down from her cockpit, she noticed that word of her achievement had already spread throughout the airbase. Personnel who had previously dismissed her because of her size now looked at her with expressions of respect and admiration. The transformation in their attitudes was immediate and complete. She had proven beyond any doubt that heroism comes in many forms. The debriefing session that followed Maria's historic flight lasted for several hours, with intelligence officers, senior commanders, and tactical analysts all wanting to understand exactly how she had achieved such extraordinary results. Every maneuver, decision, and technique was examined in minute detail as military experts tried to comprehend the unprecedented success of the mission. Maria recounted each engagement with clinical precision, describing her tactical choices and the reasons behind her split-second decisions. Her ability to remember and analyze every moment of the complex aerial battle impressed the debriefing team, who realized they were hearing from a pilot with exceptional situational awareness and tactical intelligence. Her small notebook filled with detailed sketches of aircraft positions and engagement sequences became an invaluable tactical document. News of her achievement spread rapidly through military channels, reaching high-ranking officers who had never heard her name before that morning. 12 enemy aircraft destroyed in a single mission was a feat that equaled or exceeded the career totals of many veteran pilots. The fact that this had been accomplished by a small woman on her first combat mission challenged every assumption about aerial warfare capabilities. Within hours of her return, Maria found herself summoned to meet with the base commander, a distinguished general who had initially been skeptical about allowing women in combat roles. His attitude had transformed completely as he reviewed the mission reports and witness statements from other pilots. He struggled to find words adequate to express his amazement at her performance and his regret for ever doubting her capabilities. The immediate impact of Maria's success extended far beyond her own recognition. Military leadership began to reconsider their policies regarding women in combat, realizing that they had potentially been wasting valuable talent due to outdated assumptions. Her performance provided concrete evidence that effectiveness in aerial combat depended on skill, intelligence, and determination rather than physical size or gender. Fellow pilots who had initially treated her with condescension or skepticism now sought her advice on aerial combat techniques. Her squadron mates wanted to understand how she had achieved such remarkable results, hoping to learn from her methods and apply them to their own flying. Maria found herself in the unexpected position of becoming a mentor to pilots with far more experience than herself. The aircraft she had flown during the mission became something of a legend itself, with ground crews and other pilots examining it closely to understand how she had pushed its capabilities so far beyond normal limits. The maintenance records showed that her aircraft had been operated at performance levels that should have been impossible for such extended periods, yet had suffered minimal damage throughout the engagement. Media representatives began arriving at the airbase within days of the mission, eager to interview the pilot who had achieved the impossible. Military censors had to carefully balance the propaganda value of her story against operational security concerns, eventually deciding that her achievement was too significant to keep secret. Her success would inspire civilian morale and demonstrate the effectiveness of their military forces. Letters began pouring in from around the world as news of her achievement spread through military and civilian networks. Young women wrote to express their inspiration and gratitude for proving that gender should not limit anyone's aspirations. Military officials from allied nations requested detailed reports on her techniques and training methods, hoping to improve their own combat effectiveness. The scientific community also took notice of her achievement, with aviation experts and aerospace engineers wanting to study how her physical characteristics had contributed to her success. Her ability to withstand G-forces, fit comfortably in cramped cockpits, and maintain precise control under extreme stress became subjects of academic research and military studies. Awards and honors began to accumulate rapidly, with military decorations, civilian recognition, and international acknowledgments arriving almost daily. Maria accepted these honors with characteristic humility, always emphasizing that her success had been made possible by her training, her aircraft, and the support of her squadron mates. She refused to take full credit for achievements that she viewed as team efforts. Despite the overwhelming attention and praise, Maria remained focused on her primary mission, serving her country and protecting her fellow soldiers. She requested permission to continue flying combat missions, arguing that her experience and proven effectiveness made her too valuable to ground for publicity purposes. Her dedication to duty impressed even her most senior commanders. Maria's legendary flight became a turning point, not only in her own life but in the broader history of military aviation and women's roles in combat. The 12 victories achieved in a single mission established records that would stand for decades, inspiring countless future pilots and changing military policies worldwide. Her achievement proved definitively that courage, skill, and determination could not be measured by physical appearance or traditional expectations. In the months following her historic mission, Maria continued to fly combat operations with consistently exceptional results. Her tactical innovations and combat techniques were studied and incorporated into training programs for pilots across all allied forces. Military academies began teaching courses based on her methods, and her name became synonymous with aerial combat excellence. The impact on women's military service was profound and lasting. Maria's success opened doors for thousands of women who had previously been barred from combat roles, demonstrating that gender was irrelevant to military effectiveness. Her achievement became a catalyst for policy changes that would reshape armed forces around the world, creating opportunities for future generations of female service members. Years after the war ended, Maria's story continued to inspire people facing their own challenges and prejudices. Her message that size and appearance don't determine capability resonated far beyond military circles, influencing civil rights movements, workplace equality initiatives, and educational opportunities for women. She became a symbol of perseverance and excellence that transcended her specific achievement. The aircraft she flew during that legendary mission was eventually retired to a military museum, where it became one of the most visited exhibits. Visitors from around the world came to see the plane that had carried a small woman to unprecedented heights of military achievement. The exhibit included detailed accounts of the mission, tactical diagrams, and personal artifacts that told the complete story of that remarkable day. Maria's post-war career continued to break barriers as she became a test pilot, helping to develop the next generation of military aircraft. Her insights into aircraft design and performance, gained through her unique combination of small stature and exceptional skill, contributed to innovations that improved aviation safety and effectiveness. She remained at the forefront of aerospace development throughout her career. Educational institutions named scholarships and programs in her honor, supporting young women pursuing careers in aviation, engineering, and military service. These programs ensured that her legacy would continue inspiring future generations to overcome obstacles and pursue their dreams, regardless of others' expectations or limitations. The tactical manual she co-authored after the war became required reading at military academies worldwide. Her detailed analysis of aerial combat techniques, combined with her philosophical insights about overcoming prejudice and self-doubt, created a comprehensive guide that influenced military thinking for generations. The manual's principles extended far beyond aviation, offering lessons applicable to any competitive or challenging situation. Maria's story was eventually adapted into books, documentaries, and films that reached global audiences. However, she remained characteristically modest about her fame, always emphasizing the contributions of her squadron mates, ground crews, and support personnel. She used her celebrity status to advocate for military veterans, aviation safety, and equal opportunities in all fields. Decades later, as an elderly woman surrounded by the many honors and awards she had received throughout her life, Maria often reflected on that single day when everything changed. She would tell visitors that the 12 victories were important, not because of the number itself, but because they proved that anyone could achieve extraordinary things with sufficient preparation, determination, and courage. Her final message to young people facing their own challenges was simple but powerful. Never let anyone else's limitations become your own. The small woman who had been counted out because of her size had soared beyond all expectations, leaving a legacy that would inspire courage and excellence for generations to come. Maria's story remains a testament to the truth that heroes come in all sizes, and that sometimes the smallest person can cast the largest shadow in history.